I do. And one of the things that I think is also great about our current world, this internet thing, and the ability to communicate is because writers don't usually hang out with other writers. That's not your social circle. What are the chances, unless you're in New Hampshire or something, or Maine, then maybe there's a bunch of writers. But usually you're the one writing, and then everyone else around you, your friends, your family, they're not writers. And so they have no idea what's going on in your little corner of the brain, right? And that can that's where that loneliness and I'm on my own feeling comes in. But now with the internet, you can be in immediate communication daily with other authors. You can be working with people, helping them write. You can be chatting with your editor, even when there's not a book to be edited. You can, I have just started to begin this audiobook project, A Brush with audiobook. I'm hoping by the first part of 2025. And we're in negotiations on the contract with this actress who I was in love with before I met her. I heard her voice and I went, oh my God. And then we chatted and now okay, this is my new best friend. And we can have regular Zoom conversations and regular communications all the time. It's not an isolated, I'm sending this off and I never know who you are kind of thing anymore. It's very connected, and I love that. And I think it's healthy, much healthier than it needs to be.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here. I have another great author on the podcast again, as always. So many great authors on the show. It's so exciting to meet these great people from around the world. Caryl is on the podcast with us today. She is a developmental editor. She's got multiple books, and her new book is out under her own name, which is exciting, Brush with Mortality. And I'm excited to have her here on the podcast. I'm so glad to have her here. Caryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and be talking with you and all of your listeners.
Excellent. Now, you are in an amazing part of the world in a building that is very unique. Can you give us a little bit of a behind the scenes of where you are and where you live? Because when we met to talk about this, I was fascinated by this. But can you give us some history and where you are?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm a U.S. citizen, but I have immigrated to Portugal, and I'm living in Tomar, Portugal. That's Tomar. That's in central Portugal, so I'm not on the beach or anything. Tomar is the historical headquarters of the Templar Knights. And I live in an 800-year-old stone house right in town. This used to be a stable, and there is a little carving on what used to be an entrance. It's no longer, but on the lintels, the stone lintels, that shows a Templar insignia. So that means that this was at one time used for Templar meetings or in some fashion for Templar business. My backyard is, and I'm going to say English words so everyone understands. It's the Park of Seven Mountains. And it's this beautiful park that at the top of the mountain, of the largest mountain, is the Convento de Cristo, which is the fort and convento where the Templar Knights resided. It's absolutely amazing. If anybody watched Damsel on Netflix, the castle in Damsel and the rose gardens that they're walking through, that's my backyard.
Wow.
Yeah. The whole city is one historic, amazing place. I can walk wherever I want to go, but everywhere I walk, I'm walking on history from the 1100s. It's really quite remarkable here, and I feel very blessed to have found this place and this town and this community.
See, no, yeah. As a history lover, you have me hooked. I can't wait to go there. That would be beautiful to come and see.
It's a remarkable building. The Convento is one of the most photographed places in the world. It's definitely the most photographed in Portugal. And every time I visit, and I'm there at least once a week, I find something new. What I haven't been able to do is bribe the guy that has the keys to take me into any of the secret passages.
But you're working on them, right? You're working on them. All right.
I'm working on it. I've got chocolate chips and wine. That's what I'm doing. And chocolate chip cookies and wine. I'm working on it.
Well, that would work for me. I'd give you the keys right there for the chocolate chip cookies and wine. That's great. That's a beautiful place to live. My gosh.
It is. And it's inspirational. So today I'm going to be talking mostly about a book that I've already released, which is called A Brush with Mortality. It's a literary fiction book. It's my first book under my real name because I'm retired now, so I only have me to worry about. But I'm currently working on another book, and then my next book, which is a book about Sicilian strega, or witches, a family, generations of witches, actually. And I have this house, this 800-year-old house, is now set up like a Sicilian strega's home. So I'm literally living inside my novel at the moment. And I didn't even realize I was doing that, but I have done that. I have brooms outside and garlic inside and all these things. And I realized I have everything except grave dirt, and I'd be a complete witch. So.
Wow. So what early stages for that new book then?
I'm about 11,000 words in. So that's maybe 2 chapters, 3 chapters, maybe. It's actually based on a true story, but it's complete fiction. I've taken someone's journals, and I have completely fictionalized those journals. So it's going to be a fun project to work on because it's from a person that's actually 3rd generation Sicilian witch in the U.S.
Well, that's interesting. So you seem to pull from a lot of different resources and inspirations. Like, are you just that type of person that's really curious and picking up on all these things?
I'm really curious. I love stuff that's quirky or just doesn't seem like right, but then it turns out it's true. And then I make up a story in my head almost instantaneously when I find something, the story, not a whole novel, not what I actually end up writing, but things just suggest themselves to me. And then I just go deep and I'm lost in the story for a little while. I have binders because I'm old. I still use paper. I have binders full still to this day of news articles and clippings that I just pulled randomly from things over the years. One of my favorites is there was a town somewhere in the UK that got completely, all the buildings, a village, not a town, a village, got lifted by ants and moved. And not far, not miles or anything, but the ants lifted the buildings and moved the buildings and the people out of the way for their colony. And this was this whole article that was in a legitimate British newspaper. And I just went, well, that's just why? How did that happen? How is it? And so I have that tucked away. I have another one about a road where frogs cross and they get hit by cars a lot. And there's this is also in the UK because I guess they just have a lot of quirky things. There's an organization that got created to rescue the frogs on the side of the road. And in my head, that means that there's little tiny ambulances.
Yes, of course.
That go out and pick up the little tiny frogs and find their frog legs. And we don't know where those go. And then they get on little stretchers and they get taken to the frog hospital. And that's what's in my head. Now, that's not what's in the article at all. But that's how my brain works. So
it's an obvious assumption that you'd have to know what happens. That makes sense. I would want to know. I would want to know. Yeah.
And instead of researching things, I start by making stuff up in my head, and it's usually as absurd as the original story. So that's where things come from for me.
Yeah, you've been writing for a long time. How many books total do you have in your library?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't actually know the answer to that because I wrote under several synonyms. And so, people don't, even my son doesn't know what I've written, and he knows everything about me. So I would say I have 8 or 9 books that I'm semi-proud of. But there was a period of time when I was I do not write romance. I do not read romance. There's nothing wrong with romance. It has a place. But when I was very young in my, in college and even before college, so 18, 19, 20 years old, I had to figure out how to make a living quite suddenly. And I ended up writing romance novels. So I wrote a whole bunch of romance novels. I had the publishing company that was paying me just bought them outright. So I wasn't earning royalties. I just sold the story, right? And I wrote one story, and they had very strict guidelines on the first kiss happens on page so-and-so, and you never do more than such and such. This is back a long time ago. Romance is now quite explicit. But back then it was very, very safe. And so I wrote one story, and then I just kept changing the names, locations, and hair color for the same story over and over again. I'm not proud of that. But I have no idea how many of those I did because I lived off of that for 3 years. And couldn't even tell you what their names were, but they all had windblown women with strong men with long dark hair.
The Fabios and everything, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the period, too. That was his period, right?
Because I'm on your website while we're chatting, and there's a list. You have listed some of your other books as well that you've written in the past.
I have a few nonfiction books. Those were written actually very specifically I used to work in the nonprofit sector. And so I wrote one of them strictly as a help for the nonprofit. A couple of organizations, different times they were sold and the profits went to a specific organization kind of thing. And then my one that is on healthy living and all of that is for I became a coach therapist, and it still am a coach therapist in one of my programs that I do is healthy lifestyle and living. So I wrote a book to go with that.
There's a lot of different things to choose from, right?
Yes. Yes. That's absolutely true. But the one that I want to focus on is the one I'm proudest of, which is what I just released this last on June 1st. Became available, was released May 26th. Because it is a literary fiction novel, it is so different from anything I've ever written before. Literary fiction, by its definition, is not so much about plot. It's about character and social commentary. It's about the craft of writing. And so when someone writes literary fiction, they're really writing the craft. And I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'm loving the reaction I'm getting from my readers. That's really gratifying. They get frustrated and then they go, oh my God, wow. And that's exactly what I want them to do, is get frustrated and then go, wow. So I'm excited about that book. And I'm going back with the witches one. I'm going back to fantasy a little bit more, but this one I think is going to be the one that I hope people remember me for.
Nice.
If that makes sense. This is the one. This is the novel. When
you write in a new genre, is it like working on a new muscle that you've never really worked on before at the gym? Is that kind of like that?
Absolutely. I've done the romance that I talked about, but that was so long ago. That was many lifetimes ago. My other novels that I've written have been in fantasy. I have one of my degrees is in mythology, and I focused on Arthurian legends, Arthur, Merlin, all those folks, right? So a lot of my fantasy books take from that type of story and those legends, right? This literary fiction, as I said, this is writing craft. It's completely different from a genre book. Each genre, whatever it is, mystery, thriller, suspense, has different aspects to how it's structured. And so you have to, it's like, what is it like? It's like if you're working on a car and you might know how a Volkswagen Bug works, which is simple, right? And then you go to something like a Tesla.
Right.
Well, it's still a car, but it bears no resemblance to the Volkswagen Bug, right? It's a very different thing. And so you have to learn that. And there's whole new aspects of the craft that you have to learn to get it right. And that's true with all the different genres that are out there.
I see on your website, too, that you do some developmental editing as well for a new author that's early in their writing journey, explain to us what a developmental editor does and why we need one in our works. Explain it to us.
Okay, well, first off, I should say that like many things in the writing craft, and maybe in just life in general, one person's definition is going to be a little different than the other person's definition. What I do with people is I really want them to learn the craft of writing, and I want them to write the best possible novel that they can write. So I work with first-time writers, generally speaking, first-time novelists. They might have written a lot, but not done a novel, which has such a huge structure to it that it's overwhelming. For many people, even seasoned authors get stuck in the middle sometimes. So what I do is I teach the art of writing, but I also work with the person as they're writing their novel. I'm helping them understand where they have gaps in their plot. I'm helping them understand how to have consistency within their characters and to develop complex characters, all of that. I am not a line editor. That's a completely different thing. That's someone that knows their grammar rules. They can recite them in their sleep. I'm really good with grammar. I know the rules, but I'm not that. And that's, they're looking at every little dot and comma, and I don't do that. So mine is more of a 1,000-foot
that's good.
view.
Yeah.
I love helping novice authors, people that want to write a novel but just don't know quite how to tackle it. I love helping them do that. It gives me an opportunity. Honestly, it feeds my creativity, right? Because they're going to be writing about something that I am not going to be writing about, probably in a genre that I'm never going to write in. But I can learn so much from them and how they think and from their storylines, and that can suggest other things to me and just keeps my brain ticking along, and then so that I'm not getting stale. And it's also just really thrilling when I have a 16-year-old young man in Oregon who I work with. He's writing this amazing, Kurt Vonnegut, he's doing something in that style. It's a satire. It's commentary on social stuff. He's 16, and he's doing this complex, crazily brilliant sort of story, and he's a really good writer. And I'm having so much fun helping him be better, right? Because he's young, so he doesn't have some maturity of concept that would be possible for someone that age to have. But he is just so skilled and talented. So I'm having a ball working with him, and I can't wait for him to be finished with his novel and published, and I'll get to say I helped with
I
that.
had a piece in there. Yeah, exactly.
There's a little piece of me in there because he listened. He's brilliant. I really, really think he's going to be quite important later on when he's older. I think he's going to be really a mover and shaker in the literary world.
It's nice. I love how you say that other authors inspire you, even if they're relatively new to the space. I really believe that creativity inspires creativity, right?
It absolutely does. I think that that's so important. I think, people think that writing a novel in particular, you think that even the author, it feels like a very lonely pursuit. You're in front of your computer, you're all by yourself in a room. Nobody understands what you're thinking about or writing about because you're the only one living in that world. All they can do is support you like you're a good Cocker Spaniel that they're supporting. So it feels like a very isolated endeavor. But in reality, when you're creating a novel, it's not that isolated because you do have those people around you that are making sure you eat once in a while and that just take care of you and support you. And you have the people that later on, as you're going down, you have your alpha readers, which are usually, in my case, they're people that I know. They're not book people necessarily. They're just people that are willing to read this first draft of authors that I might have created. and give me some feedback on whether it's worth doing a second draft kind of thing, right? And so that's a group of people that you might know and that are going to give you kind feedback, but feedback nevertheless. And then you have your editor and your agent and the person that's doing your cover design, and all these different people start coming. And you have your beta readers, which are usually readers within your genre that know what they're reading, and they aren't friends of yours, so they're going to give you really deep feedback. You have all these things that are all these people that contribute to that. And nowadays with social media, you also can be online listening to and chatting with other authors that are struggling and having the same issues, and discuss things like dialogue, or does this make any sense, or can you read this line? So it isn't a solitary event. It's not a lonely thing. It's a community thing. And I think people forget that, and they don't realize that there's so many individuals that go and contribute some piece into a novel. That's why acknowledgments get really long in the front of the novel. I had to just stop writing mine. I had so many people to thank, and I just went, okay, I just have to stop, Nate.
It's a novel about the novel.
It's a novel about the novel.
The whole thing you talked about working with a 16-year-old in the U.S., like that's a great example of community and writing in community and working together with people that you don't see walking down the street in front of your home. Right. I love that we can actually break out of our space, and the internet allows us to do all this great stuff. You work with people all around the world, so it's amazing to know that.
I do. And one of the things that I think is also great about our current world, this internet thing, and the ability to communicate, is because writers don't usually hang out with other writers. That's not your social circle. What are the chances, unless you're in New Hampshire or something, or Maine, then maybe there's a bunch of writers. But usually you're the one writing, and then everyone else around you, your friends, your family, they're not writers. And so they have no idea what's going on in your little corner of the brain, right? And that can feel, that's where that loneliness and I'm on my own feeling comes in. But now with the internet, you can be in immediate communication daily with other authors. You can be working with people, helping them write. You can be chatting with your editor, even when there's not a book to be edited. You can, I have just started to begin this audiobook project, A Brush with audiobook. I'm hoping by the first part of 2025. And we're in negotiations on the contract with this actress who I was in love with before I met her. I heard her voice and I went, oh my God. And then we chatted, and now okay, this is my new best friend. And we can have regular Zoom conversations and regular communications all the time. It's not an isolated, I'm sending this off and I never know who you are kind of thing anymore. It's very connected, and I love that. And I think it's healthy, much healthier than it needs to be.
It's great. Again, here you and I are doing this together. It's amazing. And the same thing you talk about as far as people not understanding what you are and what you do as an author. People do that for me as a podcaster. They're like, I don't even know what a podcast is. Why do you spend so much time on this? Well, because I love it. And I get to meet great people. Like, I get to travel the world with a microphone and headphones. It's great. It's like, I love it. So I have the same kind of feeling, right? I know. So the same I can really feel for an author as well. They're like, in their social circles, people are like, I don't know. I don't read. And you're like, well, that's great. Thanks. It's only my passion and what I do for everything in my life.
I know.
Yeah.
There's that. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true. It's not just with authors. It's any creative pursuit. The people that aren't creative don't understand that it's something you're doing from love. It's an emotional thing. It's not a rational thing. If it was rational, none of us would do it, because it doesn't make us very much money, except for, unless you're Stephen King or something. I have a line that I use actually when I'm teaching that if you have, for people that have, that might be having a little bit of writer's block, or just not feeling, or they have that negative voice in their head talking to them about how they're not good enough and not talented. And here's the thing about writing. An author has no capacity whatsoever to know whether or not they have talent. They have no way of knowing that, ever. But you still write. So you don't have to worry about whether you have talent or not, because you can't know. It's an unknown thing. The other thing is, there is absolutely no necessity for a novel to ever be written. Think about that for a second. There's no necessity for a novel. That means that if you're writing it, it's not because it needs to be written, it's because you want to write it. And somebody might want to read it if you're lucky. But there's no necessity to write it. So let go of all that stuff and just do it because you want to do it. Don't write because you think you're going to make money. That's fool's errand. Don't do a podcast because you want to make money. Do it because you love it. Don't make music because you want to make money. Do it because you love doing that thing. You want to do it. It's how you want to spend your time. And if you do that, then the universe, and I'm not a woo-woo kind of person, but I do believe that the universe will then hand you what you need. And you will have people read your book and be moved by your book. And you will have people read your book and tell you what it means. And you'll go, huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Right.
But that's okay, because a painting, a novel, a podcast, once it's released into the world, it takes on its own life. And again, there's no need for it to exist. It exists because you want it to exist, and it's listened to because somebody wants to be listening to it or reading it or listen, whatever. So that frees you up. There's no horrible thing that's going to happen if you do a bad job. It's just, it's just going to be, and then you can move on, or you can do better next time.
It's like,
I just need to free yourself up and just do what you love.
Reset button you just given us, I love it. Like, you're just kind of helping us work through some of that. We write because we have to write, not because we need to make money, as you said, or whatever, but it's just in us. We just have to do the thing, right? And it's hard to explain to somebody.
Yeah, because it gives us joy and it makes us happy, and nobody else will understand unless we get it down on paper and explain the ants moving the village. Somebody has to explain that.
Yeah.
Somebody has to explain witches, and somebody has to explain serial killers, and all those things. We have to figure it out. And that's what the novel does. That's what we do with one another, is help each other figure stuff out.
And if you go back through time, stories have shaped like everything in our lives. It's built countries, stories have built people. We can go back in our times and remember all these amazing stories from thousands of years ago. Stories have always been there.
Exactly.
Right? So,
yeah. And, there's the old saw that there's no new story, and that's sort of true, but there's always new ways of telling the story.
Right.
And that's where the fun is finding that new, quirky way to tell the story.
I love it.
There's some wonderful independent authors out there right now. And I think that writing, fiction writing, I think it's on the cusp of a renaissance, because I think the old ways are falling off, where there's some guy that wants to make money, the traditional publisher, right? And they only want it to follow some set pattern that they know is going to sell. I think with technology and all the things that have opened up for authors to be able to have control over their own creativity, I think we're on the cusp of a renaissance where there's going to be this explosion of fiction that we've never seen before. Things that are going to be written that are so creative and so that break the mold, but bring us to a higher level. And I'm really excited about that. I hope I stick around long enough to see it actually come to fruition, but I'm happy enough just to be a little part of it at the cusp of things.
So talk us through your newest book. I would love for you to talk to the audience that is your ideal reader for this. I want people hearing this to go, I know who needs this book. So A, I'm going to buy one for myself. B, I'm going to send one off to my friends and family because I know they're going to love this. But if you could walk into a room and there you walk in, let's go, you go to a local cafe, little spot there where you live. You walk in and there's someone sitting with your book on the table. They haven't opened it yet. They haven't read it yet. You walk up to them and sit down across from them. What do you want to tell them about this book? What is the thing you want them to know before they read their first word?
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer. Because this is it's a literary fiction, so it's character driven, not plot driven. The novel is about this woman, primarily about this woman, Letty May. It's set in the year 2000. She is in a marriage that is not a bad marriage. It's just a stale marriage. They're no longer communicating. The kids are grown and out of the house. And they're just two separate people living in a house that have a history, right? And she, right at the get-go of the book, she's feeling like something has to give. Now, every single menopausal or perimenopausal woman in the universe will relate to this. We have gone through it or we're about to go through it. And so what Letty May does is she posts online on a dating app and decides to have some flings. And that's part of the story, is her having those flings. But the other part of it is that she is the CEO of a hospice in the San Francisco Bay Area. That it all takes place in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she is coerced because of money, nonprofits and money. It's easy to coerce the CEO. She agrees to sit hospice. Normally the CEO wouldn't do that, with this very wealthy gentleman, Horace Cosgrove Drucker, there's a name of the San Francisco Druckers. And it turns out that he is, there's a lot of minor characters. It's all about Letty May. It's told from her point of view. We don't learn very much about her earlier history until towards the end of the novel. Some things are revealed. What the novel is about is her journey of self-discovery, in large part through the conversations that she has with this old man that's dying. He is dying of AIDS. He is bisexual. He has, when he discovered that he had HIV, he perfected some other practices that were safe practices, and became sort of an art form for him. I'm not going to divulge too much. And so they talk about that, but he also had a marriage with a woman with whom he was his absolute love of his life, his everything, right? So they discuss life, death, meaning, so many different things. And Letty May learns a lot about herself during this process. She also discovers that she's being followed by a private detective who, towards the end of the book, reveals himself and reveals some things about why he was following her. I can't give too much away because the premise of the book, premise of the entire novel, is that all of us, everyone, is judgmental. Even the reader is judgmental. And most of our judgments are faulty. And so what I ask the reader to do as they're reading this is to each of these things, all these things that happened to Letty, all the encounters that she has, her conversations with Drucker, her family interactions, all these things that happen to her and that she does. I want the reader to be making judgments about the people with whom she interacts, about her, about Drucker, until the penultimate chapter where Letty May realizes the truth, and it is divulged, the truth is divulged not just to Letty May, but to the reader. I think that most people won't guess ahead of time what's going on. They'll just be intrigued, and they'll be trying to figure out what the mystery is, and they'll know that there's a mystery, but they won't know what's actually going on until that penultimate chapter in which everything is explained or revealed, not explained, and a little bit of her background and history is announced. Letty May is not just a 50-year-old menopausal woman that happens to be CEO. She's a lot more than that, and not what you expect. Drucker is a lot more than you expect. The men that she encounters, her infidelities, are very different from one another and exactly what you'd expect. And her husband is a very minor character, and yet at least one of my reviewers thought that the entire novel was about the marriage.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But and there's her, she has her family and all that, but at the end of the day, it's what judgments you made about Letty May. You're going to find something out that changes all of that, and you have to decide whether or not, as a reader, you have to decide whether or not you're still on Team Letty May, or have you switched teams?
See,
so it's a hard book to explain, because if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to give away too much. But I have to say, I had one of my beta readers. She kept, she's writing in the margins, and I'm seeing it because it's on Google Docs. And she's going, "Why is she doing this way? And what's going on here?" And she's getting more and more frustrated as she's reading it. And then she got to the end, and she just went, "Wow." That was what her quote was. "Wow, I have no words, just wow." And that made me so happy, because as I'm watching her comments, I'm going, that's exactly where I want the reader to be.
Neat.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I want them to be, and they're going to be wondering about this. And she just followed exactly what I wanted the reader to be experiencing as they read the book. And that made me so happy. And then to have that reaction at the end of just, wow, I have no words, but wow. That made me really happy. And I have someone else say that they've now read it 3 times, because there's so much that they missed the first time through, and now that they know what it's all about, they want to go back and catch all the little hints and things that I left behind. Lots of hints, lots of Easter eggs, lots of detail that might escape the first read.
Awesome. Take us to your website where we can get more information about the upcoming audiobook, which I'm excited about, and to stay in touch with you and follow your journey as an author. Where do we go?
Absolutely. Well, first off, on social media, you can find me as @author Caryl Hallberg, and it's CaryLHallberg. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Also, my website is very simple. It's carylhallberg.com. And again, that's CaryLHallberg. I keep that as up to date as I possibly can. I also have a YouTube channel at author Caryl Hallberg, where I'm doing a series on how to write a novel. If any budding authors are out there, it's absolutely free. I'm just doing it to do it because I think that anything I can do to help authors is a good thing. I like promoting my craft, and I like making sure it's done well.
Nice.
So,
Caryl, this is awesome. I'm so happy that you had time to do this with us today. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. As always, people can go and follow through and connect with you. And again, I'm asking all the readers, when you buy Caryl's book, because you are, when you buy one for yourself or for someone you know, to leave a great review as well, because that really does help our authors.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. Right now, I've been getting all these great comments via social media. I get private messages, DMs, right? And it's someone that's read the book, sometimes a friend, sometimes someone I don't know at all. And they're telling me how it affected them and how much they loved it and everything. And I'm going, well, would you please write a review? But people are busy and people have other things to do, and they don't understand that a lot of times the decision to read something is based on someone finding a review. And so reviews are much appreciated honest reviews are much appreciated by authors, because it does help us become better writers, and it also helps move that book into the field of vision for other people. That's just true for everyone.
Yeah. So if you can take the time to write a nice DM or a comment on social media, just copy it and paste it over where you purchased the book so that we can have the exact same comment you've already written. If you don't have time to write it again, just copy it, paste it over there so that we can also share with the world, right?
Copy and paste is great. It doesn't have to be paragraphs long. Just, 5 stars.
That's minimum. Yes.
And the other thing is, I want to just give you a little credit. It's been so fun doing this with you. And we had a conversation before the recording. And you had this wacky suggestion that I have absolutely taken to heart. And so I would like to ask your listeners as well. If you buy the paperback version of the book, and I don't care where you live, go someplace that has, a tourist spot or someplace that maybe is recognizable to people that know your area, where you live, and just take a picture of the book. You can be in the picture too if you want, but what I want is a picture of the cover of the book in a location. And then just either you can send that to me on social media any which way, or you can email it to me. My email is right there on my website. And I'm going to put together a compilation of these things. And I just think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm asking everyone to do that. And that was your idea.
There you go. Dave. Yeah, I live near Niagara Falls, and I take pictures of my author's books when I get a copy, and I go down there, and the tourists look at me funny because I'm there at Niagara Falls, a beautiful, majestic Niagara Falls, taking photos of books. They're looking at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, I have a podcast. And it's like, I'm like, yeah, if you want to hear Caryl's book, talk about a book, you can go listen to my show, but this is the book right here. So it's a great way to talk to people as well.
It absolutely is. So thank you so much for doing that. And thank you for today's interview. I really had fun doing this.
Awesome. Caryl, thank you so much for making time to do this and be a part of our community. Come back in the future as new books, new projects come out. Would love to have you back. Please.
I absolutely do. You're top of my list for the next. Thank you. Ciao.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun, well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.